There we go. And we are live here to chat about tonight's episode of Arrow entitled Fundamentals. This is episode 18 of season 6. And let's just address the elephant in the room. My lighting got screwed up and I look like a vampire right now. I'm so sorry. It can't be helped. This is what we're going with. I'm so excited to hear what you guys thought about this. And as we've been doing for a while now this season, we've been going back and forth between having a guest one week and you guys being the guest one week. And last time I was on, I had the lovely Jen. This week, you guys are my guests. So I get to hear what you guys thought about tonight's episode. So if you're watching live and you have things to say and you have favorite moments and you have questions and you just want to get it off your chest, go ahead and put that in the chat below. And let's start with what we always start with, which is rating the episode on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being the lowest, terrible, awful, no good, very bad episode. We want our money back. And 5 being amazing, best episode ever. We love it. Where are you guys in that continuum? So just give me a chat below. Let me know what you thought. And that'll kick us off. So, not to be biased, but I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I would rate tonight's episode on a scale from 1 to 5, probably a solid 4.6, maybe 4.6, somewhere just right above that 4.5 mark. I'm actually, okay, let me look in the chat. Right when I said that, Stormy's in the chat. She's giving it a 4.5 out of 5. It looks like we're on the same wavelength this week. You guys let me know if yours are a little higher or a little lower than that. I loved tonight's episode. Now, I will caveat with that with saying that it's possible. And again, this is right after it just aired. I just saw it for the first time. I had low expectations for this week, which I think might be bumping my rating just a little bit higher, especially initially. Looking back in the chat, Rengoku says, I thought it was a 4, and that's saying something because I have high expectations. Okay, Rengoku had high expectations, and they're rating it a 4. So 4, he says, is very good for him. Leslie says, Felicity called him baby. Yeah, that's the first time we've heard that, isn't that? That was really, there was this stark contrast in that terminology from what we had been hearing him called all episode. You know, we'd been hearing him called a murderer and a bad leader, you know, like all this terrible stuff. He's had all these terrible words in his mind. So there was that like, whoa, sharp contrast when you heard that. I like that that's what's sticking in everybody's minds right after. Stormy says, I so love this episode. Carrie Johnson said, I liked Prometheus being back. I'm glad they give Quentin something to do. It had what we need and nothing we didn't. 4.3. Ooh, 4.3. Interesting. Okay, so we're all in a similar range so far. Leslie says, when the newbies disappear, it is always a good episode. I can't argue with you on that. I cannot argue with you on that at all. And now we did have everybody actually in this episode and then some, but they just were not the featured part. The featured part in this was Oliver Queen and his family. Stormy says, Elicity were on fire this episode. This is the couple I love. Renko, who says, yes, some of the best episodes for me are like 3 out of 5, so 4 is excellent in my book. Ooh, okay, so we have a good critic there, and they're giving us a strong rating. So that's good. Wow, we're all really excited about this. I can see the chat is like going pretty fast already. Tell me what you thought was your favorite part in this episode. So you've all just watched it, same as me. You know, the episode just ended less than a half hour ago. What's the scene that's still in your head? What's the moment that you're still picturing, or the line that you're still thinking of, or that thing where you're like, ooh, I need to go back and rewatch that. Bruna says this episode was so good. Wow. Okay, so everybody's really liking this. I'll go ahead and start and tell you what scene was really sticking out to me, I guess, or the scene that's still replaying in my mind. And it's the one we kind of already started to touch on, which is the scene where Oliver's right about to walk into a trap. He's in his original Oliver suit. He's got the original Oliver hood. You know, we don't have the like football player short sleeve sort of cut anymore. He's on the tail end of Vertigo, but about to make a terrible mistake. You know, the whole police force is there ready, and it's all of them and then just Felicity. And she's able to break through to him. And I thought that was so cool. It was so beautiful. It was a really well, not overtly, but very subtly integrated into a throwback of the history of Vertigo. Because originally, in the when Vertigo first came out, Felicity was one of the people that Count Vertigo, you guys may remember, was targeting. And we had that scene where it was just Felicity and Count Vertigo, and she was about to be injected with the drug against her will, and he came in and shot Count Vertigo 3 times with his arrows. You guys remember? And he fell out the window. Yeah, yes. So that is what's really sticking out to me. I thought that was a really well done piece of Arrow history being brought back in an episode that was full of pieces of Arrow history being brought back, which was lovely. Okay, let me go see what you guys were thinking. Rengoku says, I liked when the newbies showed up because Oliver basically put them in their place, and there was even a mini flashback of Oliver telling Renee to stand down. Very true. That was a really nice moment because with a lot of this sequence of events when he was facing his past demons, his past monsters, his past ghosts, whatever, he was able to kind of think through what was his decision process. Like, no, he is, not responsible for Renee getting hurt because Renee picked a fight. He didn't kill Renee, and Renee was trying to kill him. And he's not responsible for Laurel dying. Laurel died because she was going to do the hero thing without proper training anyway. And there's all this sequence of things that he could blame himself for if he's on Vertigo and being sort of taunted by the ghost of Prometheus, but he doesn't need to. And I say this as somebody who's not necessarily an Oliver defender or an Oliver fan most or all of the time, but in this case, it was good to see that level of rationale going on so that we can move forward to the parts where maybe he does need to rethink his actions or rethink some of his procedure, which he kind of does at the end of this episode when he's sort of like, maybe this needs to be about me. Maybe I don't need to be the leader of a team right now. And maybe they're going to get to some sort of compromise version of that where maybe there can be a team, but that team can be an as needed basis where it's like you need a hacker, you have Felicity there, but she can also still have her job in her company, or you need backup in the field, you need your bro there, you got Diggle, but he can also have his job at Argus and have his own life and have his own storyline and identity. And as for the newbies, I don't think we really need too many of them at all, but on an as needed basis. Stormy says Felicity going into the police station to save Oliver. She got through to him and his Vertigo haze. Yeah, I agree. That was such a good scene. Leslie says this episode is a healthy balance between action and romance. You're right. It was, and it was very much, and I don't feel like TV show versions of comics necessarily need to echo the quote unquote tone of comics. But I think that this episode was a good example of it actually succeeding and echoing, I would say, the tone that we would find in comics. Comics can be very much like on-page soap operas, but also full of action. And in this case, we didn't get too much soap opera out of it other than the amnesia parts. It wasn't real soap opera of like, you're going to leave me. No, you're not going to leave me. No, you're going to come back. That was in the drug haze, but it gave us a little bit of drama, but then it reassured us that's not actually real. These aren't actually these characters. That was a vision of Felicity. That's his worst fear, and it was very much like he has a stable family. He's fine. They understood the whole, Vertigo drug situation and she saved him from it. But we got a little bit of teasing of like, ooh, we got to panic for a second. And that was nice. And then we got tons and tons of action. So I think it was a really well mixed episode. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely look at spoilers in advance. So I was seeing all of the like clips of this and the teasers of that, and I was like, Felicity's going to leave him? What? Like, it didn't make any sense. So I was really happy that was just a vision. I don't know about you. Rengoku says favorite scenes include Quentin scenes, chase scenes, and the opening fight scene. So Rengoku's really loving the action part of this. I'm with you. I thought that was really well done, especially when you add the sort of hallucination aspect to it. I just thought it was really cool. And because the action scenes had a bit of, whether it be romance, whether it be family, whatever is added to them, there was sort of a heightened emotion to it that made us care about it more, I think. So, for example, the stunt sequence that we had with Oliver and Felicity, it was sort of a like triple whammy, right? So we had action in that, we had romance in that, we had a callback to some of the original stunt sequences, or in this case, I think it was probably the very first stunt they ever did, which was the elevator shaft scene. And as I think Stephen Amell has already tweeted, the positioning of that was intentionally blocked to mimic that same thing, which is really cool. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but Oliver and Felicity's stunt doubles are married in real life. Okay, back to the questions. Bruno says, I love that the Felicity scene in the police station and the hallucination fight with Adrian. Yeah, those were both solid scenes. That hallucination with Adrian was so cool because, again, I don't know about you guys, but I've been complaining a little bit about Richard Dragon maybe not being quite as good of a villain as Prometheus was. So I was just really happy to see Prometheus back. And then they had, of course, those lines in there where Prometheus is basically endorsing Dragon, just kind of like, you know, give him a shot to be the villain of the season, perhaps. Stormy says another favorite scene was Adrian dragging Laurel as a Black Canary. What they thought a few boxing lessons meant that she could fight criminals. That was pretty funny, and that was sort of that's a portion of Arrow history that's a bit sad, of course, because she's dead, but it's a bit laughable because she always should have been more the sort of lawyer storyline, I think, and or have been Slade's girlfriend. But that's a whole other long story that I'll tell you sometime. Rengoku says, I was like, why would Felicity say he should be buying us expensive gifts when she just said she wanted a divorce? She's not that petty. But then, yes, we are reassured, and he's reassuring, he's referring to the fact that that was not Felicity that wanted a divorce. Felicity didn't want a divorce at all. She understood and was willing to save him and was just a little peeved that he broke William's science project, which is fair. What did you guys think of that little comment in there that for one of her science projects she hacked Napster? I thought that was so funny and so relevant to her character, and of course her character's history is sort of a lot of questionable hacking decisions that she has made. And yeah, I can just totally picture young Felicity doing that. That was really cool. Kudos to whatever writer put that in. Stormy says, William handing Felicity her tennis shoes was a cute little scene. Felicity is nailing the step bomb role. Number one, I agree. Number two, it kind of took me a while to decide how I felt about this whole Felicity and William thing, I guess. Because while I liked it and I found it, it's cute and it's heartwarming, and there was just sort of this innate pull to these scenes where we're like, ooh, I love this. I was sort of waiting for Felicity to like we had never really heard whether did she want kids? Did she want to be a stepmom? We just I was questioning whether she had agency in this. And in this episode, I think we got to see that she cares quite a lot about William. Of course, we've always known she and William get along well. She's a fantastic stepmom to him. She's always been so thoughtful in her place in this relationship and never overstepping. So that's been lovely to see. But I always wanted to know, like, how does she feel? Like, did she really sign on for this? And I think we get reassured of that in this episode. But it was also, through William listening in on the phone call and just being like, I know what you're going to do. Like, here are your shoes. I got you. Like, that was so cool. And it really reminded me of the feeling that we got from Queen family scenes way back in the day. If y'all were around back in like season 1, season 2, where we would see, like even just think of the fact like back when Thea first found out about who Oliver was and that he was Green Arrow, or when his mom found out, and there was always just this sort of understanding and reassurance and groundedness, and you're really invested in this family through their ups and their downs. I feel we're getting that from Felicity and William, which there was a gaping hole where we needed that because so many of the original Queen family members are gone, unfortunately. And I just thought that was great. So that's my official position now on the Felicity and William thing. I've officially decided I do like them quite a lot. And I mean, I've always liked the characters and I've always been drawn to the scenes, but I sort of was waiting for like the final reassurance, and tonight was it. Let's jump back into the chat. Rengoku says, it's hard to top Adrian Chase. He's referring to my contrast of Chase and Dragon. He goes on to say, with the introduction of a new Lazarus Pit, they should bring him back for the final season to finish off strong. That would be interesting. Or, they could go full comic soap opera and bring back a twin brother or something like that. Rengoku also says, R.I.P. Cabbage. Yeah, that whole Cabbage cloning thing, that was pretty cool, huh? Any of you guys ever do a science project like that? Because I sure did not. Stormy says, Lance made sense this episode. I guess all it takes is removing him from Black Siren. And Rengoku kind of gives the little pointy thing, agreeing. I also will give a little pointy thing, agreeing with that. I think that in the scheme of this episode, it was nice to have some of the extraneous characters, and I'm not dissing anybody through calling them extraneous. I just mean that they're not the central part of this story and this mission. It was nice to have them take a step back and not have to have their own highlighted moment and their own storyline constantly. Because at the end of the day, even though I can also be a pretty harsh critic of Oliver at times, it is Arrow. That is the show. It's him and his team and his family. And, you know, for me, I see it as Oliver and his inner circle would be William, Diggle, Felicity, and then everything else just kind of stems out from there, from his son, wife, and brother, essentially. And it was nice to see everybody else sort of take a step back from that. If I were to wish for more from this episode, I guess I would wish for more Diggle, because we only saw him at the beginning, but I understand because of what happened last episode that can't be undone quite that fast. But we did at least get a little bit of him, and he was pretty responsible and seemed to be doing okay in like what was going on, even in contrast to Oliver not necessarily being the most receptive to him in the moment. I don't know. There's a lot I would change with the Oliver and Diggle thing, to be honest, but like, what are we gonna do? Just call that a drug scene as well? I don't know. Bruno says, yes, I wish I missed the Queen Mansion. Sorry, got caught up on that word. Yeah, I do too. I don't know if I want to say I would like to see Oliver, Felicity, and William move in there, but I would not be opposed. But then again, like, is it still standing? Didn't they get blown up at one point? I'm trying to remember. Somebody tell me in the chat if you guys actually know, because for some reason that's slipping my mind. Stormy says, with Lance being mayor now, I worry he may die. Oliver is the only mayor of Star City that hasn't died. Yes, and, you know, there's a lot in terms of there isn't a spoiler out there saying that Lance dies, as far as I know. Nothing that's confirmed. It's all just theory that, you know, we've kind of talked all season that it kind of seems like he's setting himself up for death by partnering with villains and trusting Siren and so on. However, the only thing that makes me particularly worried for a Mr. Lance, you know, that was like, I was gonna say, like, the only thing that makes me worried for a one Mr. Lance, but then like that kind of got tied up. Anyways, the only thing that makes me worried for him is because Sarah was coming back for the finale, and that seems like the type of thing where she's showing up for a funeral. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Rengoku says, if I could ask for more from the episode, maybe a Moira appearance in the Queen Mansion. I loved her relationship with Oliver. I quite agree. I love Moira very much. However, one of the things that I liked in this episode was the presence of Reza, because what I always saw from her just way back in the pilot, and she didn't really show up for quite a while after that, but based on the role that she seemed to fill in the pilot, is that while Moira was she was the backbone of the Queen family, she was quite a matriarchal character, and then also quite a villainous at times in her own right, in attempts to protect her family, mostly, usually. Reza was the heart. And what we saw from her way back in the pilot, when she was reassuring Oliver that she believes in him, even when the rest of his family was kind of like hit or miss about it, really indicated to me that she was really heavily involved, almost as a maternal figure, in Oliver's upbringing. So while I love when Moira gets brought back through flashbacks and, you know, dreams, hallucinations, anything like that, and I love that. Susanna is amazing, all of that. I love the presence of Reza as a sort of emotional point for Oliver, and the fact that he's now having her be so heavily involved in his son being raised, I think is a great sort of full circle thing. She has always been such an important character in my mind to Oliver's backstory, even when she's not around. I'm constantly bringing that up on Twitter. That character is like one of my like sticking points, I think, for this show, where it's like that is really important that she's there, especially now that Thea's gone. That's a very important tangible hold to Oliver's history, I think, and having her in this episode and having one of his big fears be her dying, and that would be, I think, almost symbolic of like his entire history and family and life sort of disappearing, especially after Thea's gone. I thought that was really lovely. So while I do miss Moira, I think that there was a suitable presence there representing that same sort of background, and she's still currently alive. Rangoku says, Reza is amazing. It takes a lot of good presence for me to remember a character that has only appeared in the pilot until season 6. I agree. And I mean, it was ages before she returned. Kathleen Gaddis is the actress who played her, and she was tied up on another show for ages. But the thing that's so interesting to me about pilots is that it's setting up so much about who the character is supposed to be, that even if somebody shows up in the pilot and then gets swapped out, you know that that was representative of something that was quite important to that character's history, and that's why that character was always kind of stuck out to me. Stormy says Reja's pretty much a third parent for Oliver and Thea. They really have set her up to be that way, especially because Moira was a oftentimes it seems like they were indicating that she was a bit of a hands-off parent. She wanted to control their destiny in a macro sense, but she didn't want to control their daily life or be like that like super hands-on messy mommy character. And I see, I mean, we see from what they've said about Reja, what Oliver and Thea have said about Reja, and what we saw from the pilot is that Reja was so heavily involved. It's just a really interesting point for me. And Goku also says Quentin is the fourth parent. Quentin was a bit of a father figure off and on to Oliver and Thea. I think almost to Thea in particular, because Quentin was so present when Oliver wasn't around for those 5 years. They seem to indicate that he and Thea have a bit of a father daughter relationship. And Quentin has had almost no shortage of daughters or daughter like figures on this show, off and on. It seems to be a go to for him. But Thea is probably the one that resonated the most, I think. Can you tell I miss Thea? Can you tell I want Thea to come out? All right. So I don't want to keep you guys too long, and we're already over 20 minutes, but I'm curious what you want to see in the last upcoming episodes of this season. We're already at episode 18. We've only got a handful of episodes left. Oliver has been impeached. He doesn't really have a team that much anymore. He has Felicity and Diggle probably still willing to help him off and on. Felicity is certainly willing to still help him, but he's quite worried for her and William's safety, it sounds like, and not wanting to get her involved in something that could get her killed at this point, especially because of how much William needs her. And I totally get that rationale. This always started with him believing that William needs a parent around, and that was why he wasn't going to be the Green Arrow. And now he sort of is trusting Felicity so much with that, which is heartwarming to see. But of course, we also like seeing her as Overwatch, so I don't think she'll fully let that go. But he's now in this place where he's going at this mission alone, and he's also impeached, so he doesn't even have the city behind him at this point. And he has Diaz and all of Diaz's goons after him, which is now like half the city. Where do they go from here? What do you want to see in the next 5 episodes or so? Leslie says more Elicity goodness. Well, judging by that promo, I think you might get a little bit more next week as well, eh? Stormy says, I want to see Felicity's company. Sadly, it can't be without Curtis. I just no longer trust him. It is really hard to trust the newbies, and I'm not sure I do either. I would like to see Felicity and Elena from Helix work more closely together on her company. With Curtis, I guess I'm just more it's a very much like a classic, like I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. I'm just disappointed in how they've chosen to write Curtis. He was here before all the rest of them. He should have been the one to quite quickly trust Team Arrow, but he's made some decisions that I find no going back from, both harming Diggle, and also the whole Felicity visits Renee in the hospital, and he's like, "No, go away! I never want to talk to you again," and all that sort of stuff. I think there needs to be some penance for him to pay, because I'm really disappointed. I didn't want it to go that way for him. Leslie says, "I'm so excited. I'm going to rewatch this episode." I think I might rewatch it again, Leslie. I quite liked it. Stormy says, I can see where Oliver is coming from going at it alone, but it's the wrong choice in my opinion. I think he is kind of being a person of extremes right now. He either wants the whole team together and everybody to follow his lead, or when some start branching off, he just wants to throw it all away and do it all by himself. And right now he's in that position of he wants to throw it all away and do it all by himself. And I get it. I get why he's thinking that, because at this point, the only one that he really has consistently on his side is the new mayor, who he needs to protect, the stepmom of his child / his wife, who he also needs to protect, and there's not really too many people who he can have support him who aren't also quite a risk to him and his family to have out there. And I get that, but there's a happy medium between throwing the whole remainder of the team or any of his allies apart and just going at it by himself, and having everybody around all the time. This is a full-time job. This is a full-time team sort of thing. I'm sure there's a happy medium in there for him to find. So I'd like to see them find that in the next 5 episodes, to where it's not just him trying to relive his season 1 youth and do everything by himself, but it's also not a team of everybody who's ever put on a pair of leather pants in Star City. Leslie says, DCTV royalty, Alicia's tough competition, couple goals. I love Caramel, but they also have tough competition. This episode gave me the feels. Caramel is referring to, I believe, Kara and Monel from Supergirl. Carrie Johnson says, I'm interested to see where the show goes after Ollie takes out Diaz. Diaz has been a drain, kind of like a Negan on The Walking Dead. I feel you. I feel that comparison. You're right. I'm interested to see a post Diaz universe as well. So far, this villain has not sold himself to me that much, other than how widespread his minions are, and I that's more of a told rather than a showed thing. We're told that these minions all work for him, and we've been given a couple evidence, like bits of him blackmailing people and working with him, but I want to see how this sort of charisma and web actually took place. What is it he did? Why should I be impressed? Ranguko says, I want Diaz to become a good villain, and I think the key to that is sympathy. On 12 Monkeys, Kirk Acevedo played a loving father that was framed, and it was great. It really made me feel for him. It would be interesting if we felt for Diaz and if we felt for the emotion behind it, kind of like how we did with Kate and James in the first half of this. It's a really good point. Stormy says, I can't trust Curtis to not hack Felicity's chip, not after he did it to Diggle. Ooh, that is a very good point. Why would she trust him when she is also chipped and he was willing to hack Diggle's chip? It's a very, very good question. Leslie says, can we talk about how awesome Prometheus is? We can talk about how awesome Prometheus is. I loved seeing him back. He was such a fantastic villain, especially by the end of season 6. And I thought it was really smart, the position that they used him in, how he really got inside Oliver's head in his season. So he was quite present when Oliver was sort of inside of his own head here. And all of the messages that Prometheus had for him in season 6 were sort of what he was struggling with here. So seeing him overcome that was really cool, especially with Felicity's help. Because Felicity was always, if you remember, such a key person in Prometheus's plan. In fact, Felicity is actually the last word Prometheus ever said before he died. And Felicity in this incarnation, correct me if I'm wrong, of Prometheus returning, that's the first name that he says once the hallucination appears. So that's always been kind of a fixation for him because he represents the opposite of it. So whereas Felicity represents this sort of guiding light, this grounding force for Oliver to sort of bring him back to himself and his own thoughts and his own morality, Prometheus represents this sort of dark, confusing force who can get in his head and disengage him from reality. So, in the end, having that contrast of Felicity in front of him, Prometheus behind him, sort of one over each shoulder type of thing, was so smart. And I think that's why Prometheus was such a smart villain to pick for this, more so than, for example, any other random Damien Dark, whatever type of villain that they've had in the past. I thought that was a lovely thing there where they had Felicity in front of him, Prometheus behind him, and he had to figure out which one was real. I thought that was really cool. Stormy says Curtis should have to grovel, but I'm not confident the writers will have him do that. Leslie says, yes, Prometheus knows that Felicity is Oliver's humanity. Ooh, well put. Stormy says, all the best Arrow villains, Slade, Chase, etc., know how important Felicity is to Oliver. Very true. They all know, but I think Prometheus was the one to really use it. And I think Prometheus always kind of respected, but also resented Felicity for her ability to pull Oliver back away from that sort of dark, confusing void that Prometheus kept wanting him to go towards. Carrie says, here's a query. Let's say season 7 is the last season. Does anyone expect the show will introduce flash forwards to round out the show or nah? I thought that after season 5, so way back in season 6, the show would switch from flashbacks to flash forwards, much like, spoiler, they are now doing on This Is Us, how they switched at the turn of the season, or at the turn at some point in the mid-season, from doing flashbacks to flash forwards. I thought that's what the show would do. We had 5 years of flashbacks to Oliver on the island, and we'll have, X number of seasons of flash forwards where, it would be a slow thing where we would see who would survive the island sort of slowly, and we would have to kind of wonder about that. And that's what I thought that they were going to do. And they didn't do that. And I'm still, to this day, to this point, disappointed that they didn't choose that, because I would love to see this show do flash forwards. And I'll tell you another reason why. Everybody that they have cast as sort of a main key role, Oliver, Stephen Amell, David, Emily, even Willa, Thea, Quentin, etc. They're all ambiguous enough in age to easily be able to handle a 10-year flash forward without having to do some major whatever. They could throw a few lines around here, or just highlight a wrinkle or two and easily be able to push them 10 years forward. And I think that would be so cool. But unfortunately, I'm not sure. I don't think, if they didn't do that for season 6 at the clear turning point at the 5-year mark, I'm not sure they would do that for season 7, other than maybe one flash forward scene at the very, very end in the series finale. But it's a good question, and I wish the answer was yes. I hope so. Rengoku says, Ra's al Ghul liked Elicity so much, he basically told her to say goodbye. Yeah, and he gave them that, bedroom with the silk sheets and the candles lit everywhere. Villains have a soft spot for this ship. I, for one, a known villain, have a soft spot for this ship. Stormy says, true, Roz even complimented Felicity's bravery. And Rengoku pointed out they had flash forwards in season 4. Well, not that many, just a few scenes to the grave. Yeah, they've had some short flash forwards, so we wonder who died, but not any multi-year flash forwards the way they've had multi-year flashbacks. And the show is also just on a tangible level. If you think about tonight's episode, whenever they did have the flashbacks to literally flash back to before the island, where they're supposed to look like high schoolers, like the Laurel and Oliver scene, for example. Ooh, Laurel and Oliver did not look like high schoolers. We gotta cut with the flashbacks and move to some flash forwards. None of us are getting any younger. They're I don't know. It's just my opinion. CGI it away, whatever. It's fine. All right. Well, that concludes everything. We're a little bit over half an hour. Sorry for keeping you guys a little bit later, but you had a lot of good thoughts and a lot of good questions, and I wanted to answer them. And next week, we got episode 19. We are so close to the end, you guys. We just got a few more episodes. It's 4. It's not even 5. I think I said 5 earlier. It's only 4 more episodes. That's wild. So let me just jump in the chat, read the last few things that you guys have to say, and then if I didn't get to any of them, or if you have any additional thoughts, or maybe if you're watching this after the fact, you can drop a comment down below. You can come tweet me. My DMs are open. Come chat with me about Arrow. I'm always excited to. So let's see what you guys had to say. Rengoku says if the show finishes without Oliver with the classic comic book goatee, the final scene needs to be a flash forward with a shot of it. I think they almost did that. Or at one point he had an almost goatee-like thing. It was sort of reddish, and it was almost goatee-ish, and it was close enough. I don't know, but a flash forward with it, perhaps. Matt says, I have an unlikely prediction. Maybe Oliver outs himself as the Green Arrow, which makes OTA and Diggle trust him again. Ooh, Matt, that's an interesting concept. And I know in the comics, I think isn't Oliver the one to basically out himself as the Green Arrow, sort of, or he's okay with it, or he's instrumental in it? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Leslie says Diggle was a jerk tonight. Ooh. Interesting. I don't think he was. I think he's just, you know what? I'll just blame it all on the writers, honestly. But I would like to see Diggle have that fully fleshed out, because it seemed like they were ascribing a lot of baggage to him last episode that was never really fleshed out or dealt with. It's a long discussion, and yeah, that's a whole other episode. Matt says, I think Diaz will stretch till season 7. Ooh. I mean, if he does, that would certainly give him time to develop as a villain in a way that I feel he can't develop as a villain fully in the next 4 episodes. So that would be interesting. I'm not sure if I'm rooting for that because I don't love him as a villain yet, but if that did happen, it would make sense in a way. Yeah, Matt says he and Oliver haven't even fought yet. Yeah, maybe or maybe they're just saving the fight for the finale. Rangoku says Oliver has outed himself in the comics and in Smallville. Ooh, there you go. So there's some additional fodder for that theory. Ooh, you guys are full of good ideas. All right, but I won't hold you any further. I will let you go. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for talking with me about Arrow. Thanks for reacting to the episode with me. I had a lot of fun, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.